OnlyFans, OnlyBucks. History and controversies. If I were to ask you what the oldest profession in human history might be, what would you answer, you think? Really go back in time, all the way to our Neanderthal ancestors and the first men who walked upright, got together in communities and spent most of their nights in caves and trying to get their darn subscription to fire to work. No, it's most certainly not CEO, startup leader, or industrial magnate. Those are actually fairly recent, all things considered. Definitely not an engineer or scientist. It's also not a warrior or soldier. A shaman, maybe? A storyteller? Well, religion technically isn't exactly a business. Some might even say chef is the oldest profession. That one guy who first put a slab of recently hunted mammoth meat on top of a fire to cook it. And that would almost be right if there wasn't a certain activity we've been doing collectively as a species since way back when. That's right, be fruitful and multiply! Ever since the dawn of man, our Neanderthal ancestors have been very aware of the beneficial and profitable industry of sex work. One Neanderthal gets something like food and shelter, the other gets something in return, if you know what I mean. And like any historical human enterprise, sex work has had its fair share of evolution alongside human civilization across the millennia. Ups and downs, ins and outs, the whole 9 yards. Today, though, we'll be focusing on only one of its most recent chapters. You see, also like any other industries from way back when, the industry of sex work has been revolutionized by the advent of the digital age, especially the arrival of the so-called Uber and gig working economy. And across the sea of rising enterprises and platforms for content creators and consumers to tie the knot, one website has risen above and out-kinked the competition. A place whose name probably rings a bell amongst the grown-ups in the room, whether they'd like to admit it or not. OnlyFans! Today we'll be taking a quick look at the founding and rise to prominence of the site, the man behind the cam, and a couple of controversies the relatively young corporation has had so far. This is Moolah TV. But before we start, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss any of our videos. Tim Stokely, man behind the cam. Before going deep into the nitty-gritty of the company, we should probably discuss the entrepreneur who took the first long, hard risk of pulling out all his stops into a business model that, at the time, was still pretty much mostly unheard of, at least in the adult work field. We're referring, of course, to Tim Stokely. Born in July 1983, Tim Stokely is a young millennial businessman from good old London town, and is, as of writing this, the acting CEO of today's subject matter, was born in Harlow, Essex in July 1983, and is the youngest of 4 children of Guy Stokely, a retired ex-Barclays investment banker. He has a degree from Angelo Ruskin University. Stokely's first businesses were the adult performance websites Glam Girls and Customs For You, which goes to show his early interest in the possibility of content creator-focused options for adult websites, and an unnamed site to connect customers to tradespeople. These first 2 attempts had, let's say, difficulties performing, and didn't make a big enough splash to actually take off. Tim founded OnlyFans in 2016 alongside his older brother, Thomas Stokely, with the help of a €10,000 loan from his father. Reportedly, he infamously said, "Tim, this is going to be the last one." Which checks out. I mean, even your dad would feel a little odd giving you money to try to start a porn-related business, right? Although, then again, not everyone has a dad willing to invest $10,000 of anything into any of our enterprises, adult or not. Currently, Tim's brother is the company's chief operating officer, and his father is head of finance for OnlyFans. He sought to avoid the mistakes of his earlier sites by building in a referral system that gave third parties an incentive to recruit new content creators to the site, which obviously made quite the difference this time around. It's like they say, third time's the charm, eh? Following the success of his first major business and his rise to industry fame, Mr. Stokely has been described by the Sunday Times as the king of homemade porn, seeing as the majority of OnlyFans content ended up being pornographic. Stokely cites the investor Warren Buffett and his book Warren Buffett on Business as one of his life influences, which should give you a pretty good idea of his character. Stokely himself, as of writing, has a net worth of around $120 million, which is how he's managed to buy himself a cozy little mansion with a personal cinema and sauna in Bishop Stortford, Hertfordshire. Not that you asked, but he happens to only be subscribed to 2 content creators in OnlyFans, James Haskell and Chris Robshaw, which reflects his interest in rugby. OnlyFans, OnlyBucks. But enough about the man, let's hear about the site, you might be exclaiming. As it so happens though, the story of the site, recent as it is pretty much also the story of its founders. OnlyFans was launched in November of 2016, not as a sex work application, or at least not exclusively with that intention, but simply a way to connect content creators directly with their fans without so much intervention from studios or distributors and agencies. All of that for only a small 20% piece of the income pie. Then, in 2018, Stokely sold a 75% stake in OnlyFans parent company Phoenix International to Leonid Radvinsky, a Ukrainian-American businessman and the owner of porn site MyFreeCams. From that point on, the site's reputation, which is mostly factual, as a safe haven for autonomous sex work and its content creators was solidified. Hardened, if you will. As of writing, the site has over 24 million registered users and claims to have paid out 526,785,000 euro. That's US 725 million to its 450,000 content creators. It's currently worth a whopping $2 billion. After the site was mentioned by Beyoncé in the remix of the Megan Thee Stallion song Savage in April 2020, CEO Tim Stokely claimed OnlyFans was seeing about 200,000 new users every 24 hours and 7,000 to 8,000 new creators joining every day, a number that continues steady to this very day. There was reportedly a 15% spike in traffic after the remix's release. The remix also mentioned Demon Time, a social media show, and shortly after the release of that song, OnlyFans announced a partnership with Demon Time to create a monetized virtual nightclub using the site's dual-screen live feature. It's also done more good for communities than one might expect. For example, in January 2020, 20-year-old American Kaylin Ward raised more than $1 million in contributions to charity during the wild bushfires in Australia. OnlyFans teamed with her for their first partnership for a charitable cause. This started a trend, with some OnlyFans creators who have been raising money through their accounts. Talk about fighting bushfire with bushfire! Of course, not all has been roses and poses for the young company, as it's had its major share of controversies as well. Controversies. The Bella Thorne dilemma. On the day in August that former Disney star Bella Thorne joined OnlyFans, a subscription site that, let's not forget, is mostly known for adult content, she made $1 million on subscriptions alone. Before that week's end, she had made another $1 million. That's $2 million for a week's worth of doing not much. It stands to this day as the record for fastest and largest profit-making through a content creator-based website in history. And for good reason. But while that might have been mighty good for Miss Thorne's wallet, and probably self-esteem, it represented quite the problem for the main base of clients and workers that OnlyFans technically employs. Its gig workers, which is to say, the rest of its non-celebrity users. That was bad in itself. Sex workers are the majority of creators on the site, and here was a celebrity coming in and making more in a day than they could in a year, if not their whole lives. Many sex workers relied on OnlyFans as their sole source of income during the pandemic, as in-person encounters became unsafe. But what especially angered workers was how Thorne caused a wave of chargebacks that broke OnlyFans after fans accused her of promising a $200 pay-per-message nude photo that she then shied away from sending. Shortly thereafter, OnlyFans changed its terms and conditions, limiting max subscription and tip payments and extending payout time by 23 days in 14 countries, where fraud risk is deemed highest. The company denies these changes were due to actions of any single user, but it's hard to believe the backlash to Thorne didn't factor into the decision. Another concern that most of the content creators had was that the arrival of celebrities and their following to the site would have consequences on the type of content that the site held, and therefore its creators. Much like what happened with Patreon and Tumblr. A concern, it would turn out, that most likely hit the right spot. Controversies. The porn ban announcement. Shortly following increased campaigning against OnlyFans due to concerns about child sexual abuse material, on August 19th of 2021, the company announced that from October 1st onwards, it will not be allowing sexually explicit content. The company pushed the update through a new Terms of Services policy. The company would still have allowed nudity on some very specific and regulated grounds. The reason for this shift was initially reported as pressure from credit card companies, including MasterCard. But CEO Tim Stokely later told Financial Times that it was due to withdrawn support from banks such as BNY Mellon and JP Morgan Chase, and that MasterCard had no bearing on the decision. Stokely said that BNY Mellon had flagged and rejected each transaction from the company, and that Metro Bank had withdrawn support abruptly in 2019. The decision was met with such widespread backlash by creators and consumers of OnlyFans that only 6 days after the initial announcement, OnlyFans said that they would be reversing the decision and that adult content would be allowed on the site indefinitely, citing that they had secured assurances necessary to do so. A triumph for the peepers. Controversies. Ducking the taxman. In July of 2020, Sky News reported that OnlyFans had not paid value-added tax the previous 3 years and could face heavy penalties from tax authorities. In August of 2020, Forensic News reported that the company is facing multiple allegations of fraud and theft after content creators and users said they had money stolen from their accounts. Radvinsky's previous business ventures were flagged by banks for indicators of money laundering. There have also been conflicting reports on the safety of the OnlyFans site in terms of personal safety and economic security. Creators have been stalked and harassed by clients, sometimes resulting in the leaking of the creator's personal information. Contributors to the site are hypothetically able to choose when and what they post and who receives it. However, the spike in users has caused competition and has forced contributors to post content that may be outside of their comfort zone to be able to compete with others. So, well, what do you guys make of all this? Maybe you're well aware and familiar with the site. What are your thoughts towards sex work as viable industry? Leave us a like and a comment letting us know. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell! Till next time!